Hey guys, this is Dan Wowak with Coal Cracker Bushcraft. Today what I wanted to do was talk about sharpening my knife in the field and how I go about doing that. There's a ton of different ways to sharpen blades, and what I'm going to show you guys is what my preferred method is. It seems to work the best for me, and I think it's something worthwhile to share with you guys. Of course, this method is going to require you carrying some things, and some of them things are: number one, a sharpening stone, and number two, a Nagura stone. Now, my sharpening stone of choice, which I just switched over to in the last few months, is the DC4 sharpening stone. It has a rough and a smooth side. The rough side is diamond plated, the smooth side is just stone, and a Nagura stone. A Nagura stone I was originally introduced to when I purchased my Japanese water stones, and when I use, I believe it's my 8,000 grit stone, you take your Nagura stone and rub it on top to create a slurry, and that's your final sharpening phase. But I was playing around with it and I came to a different realization of how I'm going to use this, and it works out absolutely wonderful for me. So these are my two options, and you can see even with my little leather case that I made for my DC4 stone, it takes up very little room. Now, I don't carry it every single day. I did a video on using our belt as a strop, and I believe in that method, so I don't always carry this. But in some of my longer term kits, I throw this in because I can also use this stuff for an axe, which we're going to talk about in a later video. But jumping ahead just a little bit, we're going to take this Nagura stone and we're going to just drop it in water, okay? Just some pond water, which the pond's right next to me, and I'm just relaxing here next to it today. Okay, so how do I actually use this stone? So first thing I want to do is take out my knife, and this knife is absolutely beat to crap, okay? It's still sharp, it's still cutting, but I need to get it cleaned up a little bit. So the first thing I always like to do is I like to take my shirt and carefully, without cutting myself, get all the crud and scum off the blade the best I could. There's sap on here, there's some stickiness, maybe some oil that I put on that got a little sticky, stuff like that. So I like just to clean that up with my shirt, or if I have another rag, just clean it up a little bit, just so my stone isn't getting all that crud mixed in it, okay? Now, I'm going to visually inspect my blade to make sure there's no major nicks or any kind of cracks or anything in the blade. Everything looks good with that. So I'm going to take my water, which my Nagura stone is sitting in right now, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. And I don't need the coarse side, okay? I don't need to remove that much material from my knife. So all I'm going to do is pour a little bit of water on top of my stone. Now, can you use oil? You could, but water is always available in the field, so why not just use some water? And all I want to do initially is I'm going to take this stone and I'm going to lay it against my knife, and you're going to see between the stone and knife there's a little shadow created, okay? I want to lean my stone in until that shadow disappears. Now, what you need to think about when you're sharpening any knife is that we are not sharpening the entire blade at once. We're not sharpening this much of the blade at once. Focus on small little sections, okay? So when I close that gap in, although I want as much of that darkness disappeared from there, okay, I just want to focus on one spot at a time, and I just want to take my time and slide my stone back and forth along that edge. I can anchor it right into my stomach, and I'm just sliding my stone back and forth along my edge, just like that. It's a very simple process. Pressure wise, I'm not putting too much pressure on, just enough that I feel it biting into the metal a little bit. So I did 3 passes on that side. I'll flip my knife over, and I'm going to do the same thing, just making sure that that black area between my stone and my knife is gone. That means I'm on the right bevel, and I'll make 3 passes this way. And you can see it's not that technical. All we want to do is get this edge back. Okay. So I usually take my knife then, once I do that, and I'll just go across, just draw it across carefully. Again, you need to be careful when you're working with blades at all times. Inspect it, and I will continue this method a few times, making sure that my stone is staying nice and wet, and just drawing it across that. Okay, so I would continue with that method until I'm content with the sharpness of my blade. For me, it depends on my knife. This knife's pretty beat up. I'll probably go ahead after I show you the next step for time's sake, and go back to that for probably, I don't know, 10 more on each side. Okay, so once I get that done, my knife's in pretty good cutting order. I'm gonna actually, I threw some paper in my bag today to see how that cuts. So you can see it's cutting pretty well. Okay, ripped a little bit there. So I know it's not as sharp as I would like it, but it's getting there, okay, from what it was. So to finish off, what I would do is take my Nagura stone, and I'm going to complete the same process. Now this is where I haven't seen people do this in the past, but it seems to work just as well as making a slurry on my stone or anything. So I'm actually going to take this, and I'm going to begin to work this across my blade the same way that I used my other stone. I go a little bit quicker with this method, and this is actually polishing out that edge and taking off that microscopic burr and really putting that fine edge on. Once I'm all done everything and I work on both sides, I get my knife all cleaned up and I get it looking how I want it to look, I make sure it's good and dry because it's high carbon steel. So I don't want this wet, or I'm going to put it back in my leather sheath and we're going to have some rust. And then usually what I do lastly is I take a mixture that I make that is tallow and wax, and I'll take this and I usually just lightly just rub it across the blade on both sides like that, and then I'll just use my fingers and then just even it out so my whole blade's covered, the spine's covered, and my knife is then ready to go back in the sheath and is good and sharpened up again. So this was Dan Wowak with Cold Cracker Bushcraft. That's how I sharpen my knife in the field. Of course, I take more time in between each step, but I just wanted to show you guys the process that I go through. It's very simple and straightforward, and you really need, when it comes to sharpening, find what works for you. Don't get caught up in all the gimmicks out there, and everybody has a different approach with things, and it doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong. You just got to find what works for you, and this is what works best for me. It's easy, it's quick. I could do it with a headlamp, I could do it in daylight, and my gear is very minimal that I need to carry. So thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Check me out on Instagram and Facebook if you already haven't. Catch you on the next video. Thanks, guys.